she was laughing at my background, it was still from Christmas, I think.
It looked like Derek was still celebrating Christmas.
You can make me the host. I'll run the PowerPoint.
I'm down here with the good guys.
So you're pretty proud of that election?
That was fun, wasn't it?
Here.
They had it turned on in the arena, which was fun. So there's a varsity game going there.
Number one on the docket.
Sounds good.
Are we ready?
Yep.
Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
All three to make some really good. Your best penmanship?
Don't go outside the box.
All right. Call the working session to order at 6:03.
Okay. Are you able to hear
Can you hear me all
Board
right?
Chair?
Yep.
And then, I guess we have the citizens forum, if there's anybody here. And if not, we'll just move right into the audit report from I. Bailey.
All right, I believe that's my cue. All right. Well, hopefully you are seeing the PowerPoint. It looks like I advanced it one slide. But what we're going to do here today is very similar to years past. We have a PowerPoint that we put together, and we're going to go through that. It really should hit on some of the roles, responsibilities, the highlights of the audit, and then give you some financial information towards the tail end with some charts and graphs and things of that nature to analyze where you're at as a district. I want to introduce myself. My name is Derek Flanagan, partner with Ide Bailey. I have Holly with me, who is a manager and was very involved on the audit as well. Do you want to say hi, Holly?
Yeah, I was saying, quick introduce myself. Yes, I'm Holly Kirkite. I was the manager on the district's audit this year and in the past years. And yeah, I've been with Ide Bailey for a few years now.
So we're going to go through the audit here with this PowerPoint, but if you have questions at any point, please don't hesitate to ask while it's pertinent to a slide, or I'll open it up at the end as well so that you'll have an opportunity at any stage to ask questions, but I won't be offended if you interrupt while I'm presenting, especially if it's pertinent to a slide. So overall, you've hired us to come in and perform a financial statement audit. The financial statements are your financial statements. It is our responsibilities as the auditors to express an opinion on those financial statements. And so we come in, we perform all of that work, and the end result is that we express an opinion. In the current year, you received a qualified opinion. And what a qualified opinion means is that with the exception of some specific areas, the financial statements are prepared in accordance with standards, do not contain material misstatements, and are fairly presented. And the exception is related to the OPEB information and the expenditures that we were testing, as we were not able to obtain adequate supporting documentation relative to those areas. And so that led to a qualified opinion in the current year, calling out those two items as the qualification. In the current year, you also had a separate audit of federal awards, and this occurs in any year that you do expend over $750,000 of federal awards, and that number for your school district for the year ended June 30, 2022 was $1.2 million if rounded, so you did qualify for this separate audit. The premise is the same, where we express an opinion. However, a federal audit takes on a little bit different tone for us in terms of testing, because we do look at compliance type areas. It's not just a numbers focused audit. It very much looks at compliance with laws and provisions and grant agreements, but the end result is the same where we express an opinion, and the district received a clean, unmodified opinion on compliance for your major federal awards programs. In terms of findings, at the conclusion of our audit, we want to make you aware of any findings that we have as part of the audit. And so I'm going to walk through these with you here tonight as well. And the first ones that I'm going to walk through are related to your financial statement audit. And the first three are pretty typical for organizations of your size, where there's maybe a little bit smaller of a business office and there's not as many employees. And those are that we prepared the financial statements as part of the audit, that we did propose material journal entries, and that you do have a lack of segregation of duties within the accounting department. The remaining findings that I'll walk through, the fourth one is that as part of the audit, and I kind of alluded to this when I talked about the opinion, but that in certain cases there was a lack of supporting documentation for expenditures that we were testing. The fifth one, same thing, I alerted you to this in terms of the opinion, but that as we were testing your OPEB, there was improper completion and retention of personnel forms and payroll forms that is given to the actuary as part of the census data that helps determine what that liability is. And then the last one is that credit card policies were not being followed, that we noted that as part of the audit as well. Relative to your single audit or your federal awards audit, there was one finding, and that was in the area of activities allowed or unallowed and allowable costs and cost principal. And that was surrounding some of the supporting documentation revolving around some of the payroll. And so we noted that as a finding on the federal awards side. In terms of your Minnesota legal compliance audit that occurs every year, we did have 5 items that we wanted to alert you to relative to that. And the first one is lack of proper authorization regarding student activity and general fund expenditures. The second one was that you did have inactive student activity funds, and that is if you have a student activity account whereby it did not have any receipts or disbursements for the entirety of the year. The third one is that there were funds remaining in graduated classes, and so anytime that occurs, you need to enact a plan to disperse those funds relative to the graduated class. The fourth one, some of these kind of overlap because the Minnesota legal compliance and the financial statement audit are identifying the same thing but do have to be identified in both, but just the lack of supporting documentation for expenditures that we had noted previously. And then the fifth one was lack of prompt payment of some of the government bills. And so that concludes our findings portion of the presentation. One thing I did want to make you aware of for the current year is there was a new standard that had to be implemented, and so this did add some extra time both for us as the auditors and for you internally, because you did have to accumulate some additional information for us as the auditors. And this was the implementation of GASB 87 related to leases. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this because it would get into the weeds of the accounting of it, but just in short, what it relates to is, especially if you are the lessee, on your statement of net position, it does bring on an asset and a liability, whereas in previous circumstances, it would just be a disclosure item. You can see to the far right there, the impact to you at the beginning of the fiscal year was $14,482 when we had to restate the beginning position as a result of implementing this new standard. And so that kind of concludes what I would call the dialogue portion of my presentation. Going forward, it's going to really start to focus in on more of the financial results and just where you're at as a district, kind of more the numbers-based part of the presentation. And so the first graph you can see here, and in a lot of cases, we're going to have historical information. And what that helps you with is seeing the trend analysis over 10 years. And that's what this PowerPoint really gives us the flexibility to do. Your financial statements that you see and you receive at the conclusion of your audit have to be in a certain format and really only have 1 year of information. That's what's nice about this PowerPoint. So you can see this is your cash and investment position for the past 10 years. And at the end of the year, fiscal year 2022, you can see that it did decrease. And really what that relates to, you did deficit spend in the current year, as well as some differences in timing of receipts and disbursements. The next graph focuses on your student count or your ADM served, and why that's important is, from a financial standpoint, is so much of your revenues are derived from how many students you're serving. And so as that number increases and or decreases, your gen ed aid revenues, a lot of your different revenue sources can correspondingly increase and decrease. And so having a good handle on, especially looking forward, on if that number is increasing or decreasing can really help with budgeting and knowing where the district's going to be financially. You can see in the current year, it did increase, which was nice to see considering the prior year that you did have a decrease. So kind of bounced back in 2022. This next slide is your budget to actual for the general fund. So capturing a year's worth of activity from July 1 of 2021 to June 30 of 2022. A lot of information on this slide, but I really focus on the far right two columns. The third column is your actual amount. And so that's just where the district, the actual amounts that the district ended up with for the fiscal year end. And then the far right is just the difference between that and your final budget. So you can see for revenues, we're 3.9% under, meaning you did not receive as much revenue as you had anticipated with your final budget. Your expenditures were 2.4% over, meaning you did spend more than you had anticipated with your final budget. Overall, you can see in that third column that your net change in fund balance for the general fund was a negative $538,877, and you can see what your fund balance is at the bottom of the slide, and we'll actually do some further analysis on that on some subsequent slides. So a lot of information on this, but really good to see where you came in compared to what you had anticipated with your final budget. So I mentioned we would analyze your fund balance, and some reasons we like to look at this and some reasons to carry a positive fund balance. One, it contributes to a favorable bond rating. Two, to the extent it's invested, it produces that investment income. And then three, it's just there for those unexpected items that do occur, whether it be a boiler repair or those things you just don't have planned. If you have that positive fund balance, you can draw upon that. This next slide is some information on the various fund balance categories. It's really just informational only. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but it just gets into the details of each of the different categories within the fund balances. And this is your change in your fund balances from beginning of year to end of year for the general fund. And the top part is non-spendable amounts, and those typically pertain to either prepaid items or inventoried items. And then you have a number of restrictions. The first one is more of an internal restrictions related to your student activities. The next 5 are restricted by the state of Minnesota. And so you can see the change for each of those restrictions. Then you have committed and assigned amounts that have been determined by you as the district. And once all of those amounts are determined, then that unassigned is the catch-all, after all of that's determined. And so our analysis will focus on the unassigned and unrestricted amounts on some subsequent slides. This next one is a 10-year history of your fund balance in a line chart format, and it has at the bottom the breakout in total for each category. So you can see kind of that trend analysis. You had been trending downward, stabilized, went up last year, and back down again this year. Before we get into our kind of what I would call probably the most important slide in terms of looking at your fund balance, what we do is we take your general fund expenditures, your unassigned fund balance, and divide it by the expenditures for the year to come up with a percentage. And that's on the next slide, but before we get there, some recommendations. The bottom of the slide, GFOA, which is a national organization, recommends no less than 16.67%, or that's 2 months, which for your district, based on your expenditure level in the current year, would be 1.2 million. You have your own policy, which I think is more important than the GFOA one, because you strive for that amount to be no less than 25%. In terms of what that equates to based on your expenditure level in the current year, your fund balance will need to be 1.8 million. And so as we get to the next slide, you can see that maroon line is what you have established for your fund balance policy. And you can see where you're at for 2022. The unassigned is, just as it sounds, the unassigned. The unrestricted takes the unassigned and adds the committed and assigned amounts to it as well. Those percentages for 2022, the unrestricted 17.4%, and the unassigned 14.7%. And so as we had previously mentioned, the net change in your fund balance did go down approximately $500,000, and so correspondingly this percentage went down as well in terms of your fund balance percentage. And you can see last year you were above what you have established for your own policy, but this year you have trended back down below your fund balance policy. So up to this point, we've really focused our analysis on the general fund. So not to leave a couple of other funds out, we wanted to have a graph related to your community service fund. And this is just your fund balance at the end of the year for each of the years presented. And you can see a pretty big decrease in your community service fund in the current year from $74,000 rounded, negative $74,000 rounded in the prior year, to $320,000 in the current year. So pretty significant deficit spend, pretty significant deficit within the community service fund at year end June 30, 2022. A little bit different story for the food service fund. You can see there that you did have a nice increase within this fund in the current year, and I would say that this is not abnormal for school districts in the state of Minnesota. This is a pretty, common trend with all the school districts that the fund balance within food service fund has increased the last couple of years. At year end for your district, that amount was $137,878, up from $47,000 in the previous year. So a nice increase. You can see you're above the maroon line, which is the maximum allowable fund balance that the state allows, but not to be alarmed by that. That just that doesn't mean they're going to take any money away or anything like that. That just means you just have to be in contact with the state on how you plan to spend it down, and really just send them some extra documentation on what your plans are to spend that fund balance down. As auditors, we're very much backward looking. We're auditing the figures that have already happened, but some things, this last slide, just to have on the horizon. We expect that there's going to be some continued grant activity for the school districts, so just be aware of that. In the last few years, we saw that increase, and we expect that that's just going to continue as well as you move forward. I talked about how there was a new accounting standard that we had to implement in the current year. Well, you're going to have another one next year, GASB 96, and this is related to subscription-based IT arrangements and really just licensing, stuff like Windows, Microsoft Office, things of that nature that will have to be evaluated for this new standard. And just that we're always, we have that ongoing communication throughout the year. Our audit is the same time every year, or thereabouts anyway, and kind of, very much a fall thing that goes into winter, but We're available for that ongoing communication throughout the year in various formats, whether it be phone calls, emails, but we do have publications and access to specialists and webinars if the district encounters, those unique transactions throughout any given year. And that really was the last slide, so at this point I would turn it over to you to see what questions you have.
Yeah, I got a couple, as usual. Tim Lyon, and so I know we're planning on some of that deficit, the 25,000, which really looks out of budget, that we missed on a little bit, not a significant number, not one, that I'm gonna worry about, but the other 500, when my constituents look at that in the paper, when Woody writes that down, what's the 2-sentence explanation I'm giving them for that? And I can ask Jeff, I can ask Sheena. I just need a layman's kind of response to that.
Do we have a plan? Is that kind of to
Yeah,
remedy
if
that?
I looked at it in the front page of the Baudette Region, for instance, I'd say, oh God, where do they spend all that money? They just dropped their fund balance by 20% or whatever it was. I'm trying to do the quick math in my head.
If you're looking specifically at fiscal year 2022, and I don't know, Derek, if you want to back up to that budget to actual slide, if you hit the back arrow, it should let you go back manually too. There you go.
You're really showing my age by instructing me through this, IT.
I wasn't going to call you out the first time that you did it, but I can just quick point out a couple of the larger variances on this slide and what they relate to, if that would help. Is that kind of what you're looking for as far as fiscal year 22?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so for the revenue side of things, for the state sources, that's really reliant on those student counts, as Derek mentioned. So student enrollment in this case was overestimated for the current year, and that's where that large variance is coming in for that state sources of that 355,000. Federal sources, that was due to the ESSER 3 funding. The district budgeted to spend all of the ESSER 3 funding, but had about 100,000 roll over to fiscal year 23. So you'll see some of that next year. And then in that other category, where actual revenues were larger, student activity, both revenues and expenditures, are typically not budgeted for by the district. So that's where that 215,000 variance is coming from, is that student activity revenue, for the most part. And then if you hop,
You say
yep.
typically not budgeted for because, question mark?
Yeah, that's usually an area that's difficult to budget for. I'd say that's pretty common with most districts that they don't budget for those accounts. Would you agree with that, Derek?
Yeah, I think, so going back, there was an accounting standard. You guys are getting your fill of accounting standards, but there was an accounting standard that was implemented a couple of years ago that made school districts bring that activity into the general fund if previously it was considered a fiduciary fund, and that's getting into a lot of accounting lingo, but it was a change, and it brought it to the general fund. And so with that, for some, they've maybe been a little slow to adopt the budgeting aspect of it. So in certain situations, we may see where they're still not budgeting for it. But I think with a couple of years of information now, certainly it could be, estimated, and there certainly could be budgets implemented if you kind of have some of that historical information now, especially, and then it wouldn't be any different than any other area that you'd be trying to budget for. So, but, as your district, by not budgeting both the revenues and the expenditures, they kind of offset that both are going to be obviously under budgeted, and then the net difference is is not as drastic. But yeah, I think, you know, it's certainly something that could be budgeted in future years.
Okay, you want me to keep asking? All right, so you said OPEB, and I don't know what the acronym is for, but improper retention. I guess I'm asking, are there specific dates on that that you can point to and say that's where these flaws occurred? Because I think we did some changing in the district, and I'm just curious where we lay with that.
Yeah, I don't know if I can point to a date of when the information was not retained or went missing you know, what I can tell you is that as we requested the items as part of our audit, it was not able to be provided to us. And so for me to estimate when that information or where, you know, where it is or you know, that sort of thing, I'm not sure. It's just that as part of the audit, we requested the information and it was not able to be located and provided to us. So it would have been at some point during the year, obviously.
Okay. And then when you talk about a clean, unmodified opinion on federal funding, page 1, I think, of the discussion, slide 1, 1.2 million. Is a clean, unmodified opinion in terms of getting federal funding important because we get it again, we're more apt to? I mean, is federal funding, I mean, my impression of it is you either get it or you don't, whether you've done a good job in the past or not.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. So we can never predict how the federal government would react to, you know, receiving a modified opinion or findings that are identified in federal audits. You know, they can, you know, there's situations where it's kind of all across the board, but no, it does not mean that you're entitled to more going forward, but in the instance where there could be a modified opinion, they could elect to, you know, depending on why that opinion was modified, a lot of times there'll be some additional dialogue with the district and inquiring as to what the root cause of that modification was, and ultimately it could lead to them you know, asking for any of that grant funding back if they felt like you didn't use it for the purposes of what the grant was intended for. But, you know, in terms of like if you know, you received an unmodified clean opinion, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden that you have access to additional funds or, you know, new funds or anything like that. It just means that in terms of with the grant funding that you had received, like I said, we're very much backward looking and auditing what you had previously received, that we were able to get comfortable to provide an unmodified opinion on that, which is going to lead to less questions from the feds and less of that correspondence. So it's a very positive thing, but we can't really predict, you know, if it were the reverse and it was a modified opinion, we wouldn't be able to predict how they would go about or if there would be any action that they would take.
Okay, and then lastly, from here anyway, credit card policies not being followed. Are we being specific to our credit card policies, ones that we've instituted as a school, not necessarily ones that are general accounting principles kind of credit card policies, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's what I got.
And I had a question just for clarification. So the capital outlay, oh no, the final budget compared to original budget is the pool, correct?
So you're talking the 598,845?
It doesn't show up under variance with final budget. It's just that the difference from the original budget to the final budget.
I would defer to the district on that question. I'm not sure what changed from the original to the final budget. I don't have any notes on that.
It wasn't in the original, right?
No, it's the pool.
Yeah.
Under community ed.
And that's why the community ed is
That's
negative. Yeah.
the big piece of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
have to provide responses to these?
Called deficiencies in. I believe that it's in the hands of the business office manager to provide
Yep.
responses
And that would come at
from Sheena.
a future board meeting.
And then I would say that she should provide a copy of an action plan or verbal report of an action plan to the board.
I think some of it we've been addressing, and it's,
Yeah.
but that was just a question of that.
But I think that would close the loop, I think, for the entire board.
Mhm.
I mean, if anyone disagrees, that's fine. I just think that would just kind of close the loop and say, this is how we're going to address this, and this is how we've been. And I know, and I think everyone is aware that we've been working on some of these shortcomings from the audit, so.
And if it's helpful, I can resend that document to Jeff and Sheena, that corrective action plan, because that is complete.
Okay,
And then
I
as
figured it was, but I wasn't sure.
far as the fund balance goes, is that something that's being discussed at the finance committee level?
We have not yet, because I've given it some thought about, I don't want to lower it just because, but is ours set too high? Is there any recommendations from the audit firm regarding that? 25%, is that excessive, or, should we, I wouldn't modify it down to like that 17%, but is that an excessive expectation?
Yeah, so we typically stay away from providing like a recommendation of what it should be, but what I can do is provide you with some hopefully valuable information. The 25% is not outside of the percentages we see. I would say every district is different, and you have to factor in the size of your school district. Larger school districts maybe don't have to carry quite a high percentage just because they have, they're just dealing with such a larger volume of revenues, and so then like a 3% swing is a little bit bigger to them than it is to a smaller district. And so you really have to know your own school district, which is your size, what your revenue streams are, what you expect for expenditures, what you expect your student count to do in the next 2 to 3 years, 4 years. Do we expect it's going to increase, decrease? All of that should go into the thought process of what you want your policy to be. But I would say 25% is not outside of, it's not like it's higher than any of the other policies we've seen. We see it kind of all across the board, and each school district has a little bit different facts and circumstances, but, I would say 25 is definitely within the realm of percentages we see.
I believe it's a $200,000 difference, right?
That's so the
It's 1.8 versus 1.6. I'm going off memory, so.
1.0.
I remember past conversations on this 25%, but just because we do have such a small school population that we wanted to keep
600,000.
because it is not a lot of cushion
And
there.
it's been that way for many, many years, I think. That's the number that people reference Morton Eastmith, I think, his time on the board, which was many years ago. So.
I just think,
Yeah, and that's accurate in terms of, typically the smaller the school district, that percentage that the district strives for ends up being a little bit higher and a little bit higher. So, like I said, you're really factoring in what you have going on. You have a little bit of a unique situation with your community service fund as well, and things of that nature. So you just really want to factor all of that in when you're thinking about what you want that policy to have for strive for percentage.
well, I'm assuming that the increased expenditures because of COVID would not affect this because the revenue reflects that as well. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, certainly there were, and that's part of, we had that single audit, that federal audit, and the ESSER funding. Certainly that's a part of it, and the timing of those revenues is different for each district. But certainly there were revenue streams that were not previously available prior to COVID that school districts have had access to. And so, yeah, are there revenues coming in, but then are there increased expenditures because of what you're dealing with because of the COVID pandemic and everything? So you kind of got to, weigh are the revenues keeping up with the increased expenditures too, and really be looking at all of that.
Well, and I guess what I was wondering about was, ours being so high in 21, if that was a reflection of some of the unspent funds that came in. Not sure. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it could be, just based on a little bit on timing, but yeah.
I mean, we still need to get it up. I mean, I'm not arguing that point. It needs to be higher than it is, but I'm just, yeah. I mean, because we did a transfer out of that revenue fund into another fund during the year, and it would have helped a little bit to have had that money in there, but it was based on the information we had at the time, so.
Any other questions? Anything we need to do to the Jeff right now in this moment, or?
Nope.
Okay, well, I guess, thank you for the presentation, really appreciate it. Got some thinking.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have a great night.
You too.
Thank you.
We have citizens for the citizens forum if you want to back up.
Do they need to do anything in particular for forum? Just,
We can ask if there's anything and whether it gets addressed today or not.
okay.
Normally we do have that
Do you have a
request to be mailed to you by a certain time, but you
Sure.
can just ask, it's up to the board.
Is there a request for the citizens forum or?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions on some stuff on the Zoom.
Okay, and we might not be able to answer them today, but we could definitely take the questions right now and see what goes.
So my question is about the superintendent making recommendations for adjustments in the curriculum. Who currently makes the recommendations for curriculum, and why would we be changing that?
There's a resolution in this year's thing.
That's,
I think that's always,
it's a yearly thing, so that's, because we just went through the budget and stuff, so that is just having the board direct me to look at programming, staffing, enrollment, where we're at with the budget, and if we have to bring back recommendations for reductions in staff and that type of thing. So it's just a formality to start that process.
So every year it's your
It's
recommendation?
every year, and we haven't done reductions in quite a few years, so.
I was just curious on like what curriculums you choose and why.
It's more programming, and it's more tied to the budget, so.
So basically the money that you get to run certain curriculums, right?
Not sure how to answer
well, I think and I read it the same way you did the first time I read it. It was kind of like, why are we, you're going to give him a right to go in there and gut the program or, use his own judgment. But bottom line, the board is giving him the direction to do it because he doesn't have the right to necessarily go in there without our approval and say, look, we want a balanced budget next year. And you can hear that. We got to work on some things. I don't know if there's cuts, impending or not, but we're going to direct him to do it. And then he would have to come back to us again and say, okay, this is what I came up with. We changed this, we put, shop in, we pulled band out, whatever. I mean, I'm using hypotheticals, but and then we have to approve it again. But we want him to do it because we're not capable, we don't know the day-to-day what's going on here, who should be, where the money can come from to make these things right. So it does sound a lot more draconian than it.
And not, I mean, obviously it was always gonna come down to board approval, but I was just curious as to where curriculum
But you also
standards
get
come
feedback from
and-
staff and stuff too, Jeff. Like, it's not just you deciding, you
Yeah,
talk
we're
with Miss
not, it's
Merchant,
not
you
to
talk
change
with,
like specific curriculum and stuff, that's already been set. This is more for reduction of staff and programming.
Okay, and I have one other question too on the video surveillance other than on buses. So I read different school boards take on that. I imagine it's all probably the same throughout the state of Minnesota. But with that, are you talking about surveillance just in the hallways or in the classrooms? That part was pretty vague. I did read one part that said something about surveillance in extreme cases in locker rooms and bathrooms. That the 712 is linked to the Minnesota, like, whatever statute thing, and it said that in extreme cases that would be an option, which
It does say that video surveillance will normally not be used in bathrooms or locker rooms.
But it does say that it could be.
No, what the changes that the board is looking at only has to do with law enforcement having access to the school surveillance cameras during a crisis.
Okay.
So
Do we
if we
have
had an
surveillance in the school currently,
Yes, we do.
in classrooms, or just?
Not in
the main-
classrooms, in the hallways, in the commons, entranceways, outside.
But no restrooms or?
No, and I didn't
No.
assume that was the case, but it was mentioned in there that in extreme cases that would be something that could potentially happen, which I don't think that is.
The proposed changes that we have on our policy with the district is just that if there's a crisis situation, that we can grant law enforcement access to the videos. So it's just, if there's an active shooter type thing or something like that. So when they send in law enforcement, they have access to the videos for their benefit. So it's spelled out very specific on when and how they could access the surveillance.
So where are those things so that the public could read those as well? Because like I had to do some internet searching and the
All
website.
the school
does-
policies are on the school website. If you go under school board,
Yeah, it's under
there's a thing that
district,
says policy.
school board policies. That was updated as of this summer, and I know that the policy committee does, I manage the website, that's why I'm chiming in. The board does regular updates on the policies, the committee does, so I don't know, that's always an ongoing process, so I don't know if there's a moment to have a full-on, maybe once a year or something, but what's up there is most updated for what I've got. If I can, after the meeting, show you where it's on there.
The physicality of it, I mean, we used to have it in paperback, and I mean, it's a heavy tome, it's pretty big. So, I mean, it's almost like you're thinking you'd need a specific, I'm looking for that policy, what's this one about?
Right.
And then the recommendations are pretty, I think, boilerplate in terms of the state, correct me if I'm wrong, but just offers us not suggestions, but they offer us how they're changing the policy. We don't necessarily have to accept it. I mean, we're a local district, but I would say 99% of the time, Jeff.
A lot of the changes have to do with changes at the legislature and requirements and a lot of that.
Terminology, changing one word because now the accepted.
Something's updated.
Yeah. But we have, since I've been on the board, made a more concerted effort to have the policies updated on the website, so.
Yeah. But they would not be updated until the final reading, I'm guessing, or the final.
Yeah.
approval.
So the
Like,
example
some of
of,
them have 3 readings. And,
Right, well, that's what I looked back in some of the minutes and it said like the first reading of 712 was like last month or something, and so on, so that's why I was concerned, I guess, about that it's the third and final reading and I hadn't looked at it prior to, so that's what I was asking.
Anything else?
I don't care about positions and staffs and all that, I wanna know about the curriculum. So how much does the state, and shall we say some of their policies, determine your curriculum? Can you, if you don't agree with it, not particularly go to the letter of a curriculum?
We have to follow state standards.
Excuse me?
We have to follow the state standards set at the state level.
You have to. What happens if you don't?
You can lose
That's not
funding.
necessarily true statement.
Well, like, you could lose state funding.
And is there a specific standard that you're concerned about, or I guess I'm not?
Not exactly just yet.
Okay.
But I do know that the education committee in the new house has got about 4 or 5 things going on in it, and a couple of them are out there.
Do we have any variability? I mean, in terms of, like you say, they're standards, but it's not curriculum specific. Like, it's not the same syllabus in every high school, for instance. Or your English teachers are giving you a little bit of a variance to it, right? And your math teachers are giving you a little bit of variance based on the students they're teaching, right?
If you want to, you can probably do better than I can.
Okay, so when we're looking at curriculum, it's really the standards. So the state says we have to meet these standards. So for example, our 7th and 8th graders have to have an art standard. So that means it could be band, choir, or fine arts. And then under that, what they're exposed to, there's a lot of leeway with the teachers. So it's not like the state is saying everybody has to follow this curriculum book and this curriculum series. It's really, if you think about the skills the kids are learning. So if you think about first graders and what are the math skills they're learning are really where the standards come into place.
Tim, you know me well enough. That sounds like borderline BS, but that's okay.
Well, I know that you want changes. I mean, I know you well enough to know that you would stand up and say, this is what I'd like to see taught. But like I said, I think at the moment, we're at the beck and call of the state. We got to have kids be able to add 1 and 1 by the time they get out of first grade, for instance. How that's achieved, I think, is what you're saying. You're going to get a lot of variability based on the kids who are in the classroom, you know, what the teacher's capable of, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that's where your variability comes in. I don't know specifically what you're talking about in the State House, but I guess that comes out. When do they offer up new standards? I mean, is there a timeline on that?
There's a review cycle, so the different subjects areas are different reviews, and I believe the latest one up is social studies and science are going to be the next two.
The big, excuse me, the big thing today was if your student is acting up, whether you can keep them out of recess. That took up about an hour and a half of the Senate committee.
Okay, and I'm not sure how that would apply to, for instance, a math or an art standard, really. I mean, in terms of disciplinary, I mean, maybe that's different in the school system, but I think that there are standards there that we have to follow as well, so.
But if you don't, then that potentially can cut into the dollars.
I think there's always threat of dollars when you start getting, you know, one way or the other of what they want you to do. Yes, I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, that's what keeps our feet to the fire. You could hear that in the audit. I mean, we're trying to figure out a way to make sure that that fund balance right now is, you know, creeping back up where we want it. You know, going through a little bit of lean years in terms of kids. I know you got a couple grandkids, tell them to keep coming.
I have a question also on the curriculum in the classrooms. Then, like, our children aren't old enough to be in school quite yet, but when it does come time for them to be in school, is there an option for parents to see what the teacher's syllabus is and the books that are going to be in each classroom?
I think we've been very good about that in recent years, just because there is some volatility that's shown up, you know, over the course of, I mean, every school district's seen it. People are happy with this, not happy with that. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, but an English teacher, for instance, Jen Moeller would offer up a syllabus or a synopsis of some word of what she is going to have them read this term, for instance. And that's presented to the public on the 1st of September for a round number. You have the chance as a parent to look it over, ask for an alternative to that book, for instance, if there was something that you didn't like about it, or a different course of study for the kid in terms of that. So yes, I think that we're encouraging parents to get involved in this. I'm actually a little bit surprised at the lack of response we got, because I think about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot of thought about it, but once we started offering up these, hey, that's what we're putting out there, here's what's going to happen in the next 3 months, we've heard less. Is that also, we're always looking for parents to get engaged here. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, get parents into it, so, you'll know as you're going along now.
I know a few years ago, like when Brian Novak, just before he left, we had been talking about, with the internet and web pages these days, that it would be pretty easy to display for all the teachers and classes to display whatever material they're going to be using in every class, and there's no reason to not make it public, at least as far as I can see. So maybe we should revisit that again. And because right now it's kind of, you have to ask to see what's there, and it's like, well, we're funded by all the taxpayers. Maybe we should look at that again. We're kind of gearing up towards it. I know Brian Novak was kind of looking at it. And again, with the website and everything else, it should be relatively painless to get all the classes, what we're doing in them. Then everybody knows what everybody knows.
Yeah, for instance, and that came up in the meet and confer we had the other day, but they're putting out work assignments like on e-learning days. You get a snow day when the kids are, and that's the new craze, and that's difficult, let's face it, but you can go right on there and see what your kids are supposed to be learning during the course of every given day even. Here's the homework assignment, here's what you should have achieved by the time you get back to school, tomorrow or the next day or whenever that is. So, I think it is available there, or the bulk of it, and more of it could be if it's needed.
More of it would be, you're probably referring more to like the parent view type thing, and you can see what your kid is doing, but I'm saying just have all the classes and all the teachers or whatever, and just list everything. And then, on some of it, yeah, it's not going to be too big of a deal, but I don't know, in the elementary class, what books are they going to be reading, or in a English class or the math class? And because the other one you're talking about is more, your kid has to be in school and you have to have an account and you can look and see what your kid is doing, but there's nothing there. Like I wouldn't be able to go in, at least as far as I know, I wouldn't be able to go into the 4th grade class to see what they're doing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
An objective look at it, like you say, from a taxpayer perspective, not just because your kid's touching that book. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm gonna maybe wrangle us in a little bit, just because try to move this along.
Sorry.
I think if you have more questions, it'd be probably good to visit with Jeff, and definitely, if there's something as a school board you could bring back to us, or some of this curriculum discussion and questions I could have, if there's things we can address as a board that we could. Does that seem fair? Great. And thank you. All right, on to board committees. School Forest did not meet this month.
Did not.
Meet and confer.
We did. We had discussions about how emails are dispensed around the school. We had discussions, at staff versus individual specific, some of it a meat and potatoes item, and then copier issues seems to crop up here and there. And then not a discussion for this time, but sort of a generalist question is in terms of the enrichment program and where that stands now, where we hope to see it as a board, maybe, directionally over the next few years, because I think there's some questions out there, and how it gets funded was the big question. There's not enough money available immediately to make it a big issue, but if there were people who are interested in helping to do some fundraising to make that, because in its history there is some, there's a history of private funding to enhance whatever it is you want. So anyway, those were the discussion topics, and I know we're getting late, but if you had a question on any of that, feel free.
Is enrichment, is that full-time or is that part-time?
Historically, we get about $6,000 for enrichment, so normally it's been a half-time position at best.
I did run some reports today,
Yeah.
and we haven't gotten enrichment funding for the last couple of years from the state.
Because they don't want to give it to us, or because we just haven't designated a spot for it?
I'm usually not an option. I'm wondering if that was discontinued, or I'm not quite sure. I can find out, but yeah, they haven't gotten revenue since 2018 for it.
And that's through Community Ed Fund for it.
Okay.
All right, anything else under meeting? Then finance.
Anything, otherwise we can wait for Sheena's
Yeah, I think we
report.
could wait
If
for
there's anything
Sheena's-
special the board wants to talk
for
about.
Sheena's business office report.
Okay, sounds good. Next up, superintendent.
You have in your packet, I have the enrollment update. We're actually up 4 students from December. You had your organizational meeting, and I was informed that there's some questions or some things that I missed on the agenda. The current rate for meetings going over 4 hours is $120, and that was set back, I believe, in 2021. And I don't believe that was in your agenda. So that's an action item to set that tonight. Reimbursement for staff taking their own vehicles. I think last year it set at 18 cents a mile. The prior year, I believe it was like 19 cents. And I'm really not sure where it originated as far as how they set that rate. I know that for flex medical transportation is currently at 22 cents per mile. So we might want to take a look at that. And then policy 213 is that the school board committee provides for the development and appointment of committees that board members serve on. It was last updated in 2018, and I was looking at it the other day, and it's outdated as far as the listing of what our committees are. So when we talk about all the board committees that you serve on, all of them must be open to the public and need to be posted. And the current list needs to be reviewed and updated. There's several committees that were more ad hoc and are inactive. There's some appointments on there, so they're not all committee membership. Some of them are just appointment. I know there was a question specific on the cabinet committee, and that was an ad hoc that we started when COVID came. We had a handful of meetings. I also have a cabinet, which is my supervisors committee, so there might be some confusion with that. And that's my administrative team that we meet monthly. I don't think that would be appropriate place for a board member. So that might be one that we would take off the list. So I'll be working on that for the next board meeting in February, and probably bring some history on all the different appointments, and we can look at recommendations on what ones we want to keep, which ones we want to get rid of. And I'm going to do a mid-year professional growth report in February, and that's to gear up for my evaluation that needs to be done by June of this year. So I'll be getting that out to the board to review before the next board meeting. And I'll be looking at questions that have come up in the past, or if you have questions on any part of like the evaluation process, some of the areas and questions that you're asked to rate me on, if you need clarifying information, so you can make an educated score on that, that we can discuss in February as well. So when we do my evaluation, you feel you have the information you need to assess my performance. I sent out an email. I'm not sure if I know a couple have replied. We need to get Mary's contract settled here. So I'd like to maybe tonight before people leave, and that would be Robin, Carla and Tim, if we could come up with a couple dates with Mary on when we could meet to discuss her contract. And someone did mention the HITA. Was that you at the last finance meeting? We're talking about the HITA process? Yep, so that's on my thing too. So that was posted in the paper, and HITA is the Health Insurance Transparency Accountability process, and that's set in law. So RFP went out to the newspaper, I believe it posted this week, and bids are due Monday, March 27th, and the bid opening will follow. And that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Jeff?
No.
Okay, I think we can move on then to high school.
Good evening. At the January 16th in-service, I met with the elementary teachers to do a curriculum review for reading and math. Reading, we're in our second year of it, and so I have just a couple teachers I'm waiting for their responses to get back, and then I will visit with Jeff on what the responses are. I can say generally looking at it, the scores actually, so it's on a rubric from 1 to 5, and very, very solid with 4s and 5s for the reading, so that was very encouraging to see, because it's also, yes, we know the teachers have had extensive letters training, so to know that it aligns with that training, I think shows that we made a good choice with that. And then high school teachers are doing revisions on the course handbook, because we have several classes that are taught every other year. So getting that ready to look at course options for the high school students. I know March might seem far away, but looking at, about March, April, getting registration. And then high school also went over PBIS and where we're at with that and how it's going, and feeling really good about the process we have in place this year. And then also had some MTSS meeting time. Semester ended on Friday, so grades, teachers have to have them posted tomorrow, so they'll be opened up for parents tomorrow night after school and shared with students. And then our Lake of the Woods Prevention Coalition, every 2 years they do a positive community norms survey, and so we've scheduled February 23rd to do that with our students. And on that day, we'll just do a class meeting schedule, so that we'll have every class, because they figure the survey is probably going to take about 15, 20 minutes for the kids to complete. And then I attended a Northern Division meeting and have the MASSP Winter Conference this week. Last week I reviewed the One Act Play, which they will be presenting to the public this week, and then competition on Saturday in Roseau, I believe. And then I included some career and college planning, what takes place in the building. So I'm not going to read all that. That's there for your reference. And if you have any further questions on that, please let me know. Any questions on anything?
When your initial one got me thinking, did I miss the thing on the MCA results or anything? Or have we done anything with that? That's back in the fall, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it's in the fall when those come out.
Did we have a discussion about it?
Well,
like, did I miss it, or?
Workforce Committee did, so I think you
the what?
missed it, Boyd.
The World's Best Workforce Committee did, and she provided a report.
Okay. Okay, I was just.
And then,
I can't remember what month it was.
one of the things that came up from the elementary teachers on that was they really want to be able to compare apples to apples. So Diane has put all that information together, so at our March in service, and granted, it's only going to be since 2020 because of COVID, so it's really starting a new era of comparing test scores. But for example, our 4th graders, you'll be able to, Diane has a document where you can look at what their 3rd grade scores were.
Okay. Well, even if there's a gap, I think we need to go back a number of years, like at least at 2010 or something like that. I think we need to keep doing that. If it came out, I mean, I very well may have missed it, so if if I did, that's on me, but I guess I'd like to keep seeing that, because we'd been down for quite a while, and I want to know if we're still down or what's going on, so. Yeah, and again, I apologize if you guys did present that and either I didn't notice or I was gone that time or something like that.
Okay. I'll make note of that, thank you.
When did the World's Best Workforce Committee meet?
September. And if you want me to reshare those documents, I certainly.
Yeah, because I wasn't there and I'm on that committee.
You are.
And I'm looking through
I'm
to
not
see
on
if I
board. I'm not
missed
on it.
like an invite.
It was a low
I don't know.
turnout of people that day.
Yeah, well, I'm just like checking my email because I'm not seeing any.
Is that something you can share with the whole board?
Yep, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And it is, I believe, posted on the website. Yeah, that is one of those documents we post
You
on the
have to do
website.
it.
You can actually go onto the state website. I've actually looked at the state website, so I know what it is, but I would like the comparison going back a number of years. It's quite cumbersome to try and do that off the state website, if you're not administrative level or something like that.
Anything else?
The college career counseling that you referenced there, are you the one who initiates those
Yes.
moments? So if I had a discussion I wanted to have with you about that, I try to combine that with our contractual meeting maybe as well.
Sure,
I won't take your time with it now, but I got some discussion there.
sure, anytime.
All right, we'll move on to the business office.
So now that audit was complete, our data for 2023 was inputted into budget analytics, so I was able to provide all the reports for the first 6 months of the year. State revenue is received at 45% for the year, and federal revenue is received 23% of our revenue. I broke down our 2023 grants again, and then I'll go through each one very quickly. Our Finance 160 grant, I'll be drawing our basically last quarter expenses, which is $9,539.21. The state asks that we spend the money and then draw. So we'll be spending the whole grant this year, but drawing as we spend it. Finance 161, we are receiving $113,799.27. With this grant, it is only for summer school and after school and before school. Things such as credit recovery or summer school extra things. One of my coworkers, I contacted one of my coworkers because we're struggling to spend it, as is most schools in the state. She did a webinar that said we can use the money for sports. So she revised our grant and submitted it, and the budget was also submitted and approved. So for our spring sports, we can use the funds to pay coaches, officials, game workers, and supervisors. The funds will be used to cover transportation expenses and bus driver wages. And we also will be waiving all student fees for the spring and even the fall sports because we have such a large amount of money. And then free admission will also be provided for these events. And that's a stipulation where in order to get this money approved, we cannot accept funds from the students or even gate fees. Usually in the spring, admittance is not accepted for track and baseball, softball events. And so now in the fall, I assume we're still going to have a lot of funds available. So the plan is to still continue this into the fall. The last, basically this money is set aside until fall of 2023. So that was really positive, I feel. I think it's great, it's gonna help us spend money. And so anyone that already paid for spring sports, they will be refunded. So I did draw $4,338.28 of that grant. Pandemic enrollment loss grant, finance 171. We received $25,946.58. I will be drawing $8,956.04 expenditures through December 2022. Our COVID testing supply grant, finance 170, we have $20,000. I drew $7,162.69 of expenditures through December also. That money can be used for nursing supplies, COVID testing supplies, if there were any, and for the most part for us, it's the nurse. For wage for supplies, giving support for sick students and staff. The USDA Supply Chain Assistance Grant was received last month. We got $12,951. And Jackie just informed me that we will be getting another $8,000 in that. They do have nutrition requirements for that grant. They didn't ask to see mine last year, but like for instance, milk meets all the standards, bread meets all the standards, so we'll just use that money to pay for like milk and bread and things like that. We also just got $6,000 from a farm to school First Bite grant program. We're still in, I did complete some paperwork. We have an e-doc that should be coming to us that we sign, and then we'll be getting the funds. I am working on student activity account cleanup. We went over this in the finance meeting. Now that the auditors went over everything, now is the time to just tackle things that really need to be taken care of. So I'll be working with Mary and Jeff and the advisors just to discuss if there's any student activity accounts we can eliminate or some that can be combined. And we have some cleanup on some classes that still had funds available from a couple years ago. And I'm not sure really what was done prior to me, but I send student activity reports out monthly to the board and to all advisors. When I started, the credit cards hadn't been balanced for the whole year. So once I finally got that caught up and everything coded, then I was finally able to provide these, assuring that they're correct. Part of the reason why there is still money in some of the accounts is because we didn't have receipts even to back up what the expenditures were for. So even though something probably was for the class of 2022, I didn't have a receipt or any information to even back up the purchase or the expense. So we're going to work on cleaning up these accounts. So next month, there'll be some motions to spend the funds or combine accounts and things like that, since just like Bailey had indicated, there was a change in the rules for these accounts, so anything that's done has to have board approval. I provided the cash report, again, which is just basically all our statements combined and condensed, which shows our balance for each and our total balance of all of them together. And then I also included our quarterly report for quarter 2. It's broke down by expenditures for each fund. Currently, we are sitting at 45% of our budget expended. And then for revenues, with all funds combined, we are sitting at 44% of our revenues received, which is pretty close to accurate since we're 50%. W-2s were completed and mailed out on January 16th. They're also available electronically for anyone that works at the school. 1095s will be completed this month also. I am waiting on one data file from one of our insurance companies, and then I just received the other one today. I am working on the budget, which will be presented in February. Our voluntary pre-K school readiness application was completed last week. And then I'm also working on our pay equity submission that has to be submitted to the state by the end of the month. So what that pay equity is completed every 3 years. And it's basically reviewing all wages and just making sure that they, a manager is above their workers, and just comparing just to make sure that everyone's paid in the range that they should be, just within our school and statewide.
I would be excited if you cleaned up the student activity stuff, because it just seems like that's something that comes up in that audit every year, and we just can't seem to get arms around it, so thank you.
And just, going over the audit, a lot of it does take a while to kind of clean up and, and things, and, Carly and I are working and trying to catch up and fill in the gaps of things that, weren't there. And I think our new payroll system's working much better, everything electronically for the most part, and everything is on file in the office.
Anything else for Sheena?
Would you send out a copy of your action plan, or whatever you want to call it, the corrective plan for the auditor?
Well, I was reading it, and for each finding, it indicated the superintendent would create an action plan. I have no problem assisting with it, but.
Good, because you're going to.
Yeah, so I didn't want to overstep my boundaries or something that, there are a lot of things that we already addressed just because.
Yeah, and I knew that, but I just thought I would just close that in for us.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah,
we'll
and
put
I'll be
something together.
really honest, I came in and the fiscal year was pretty much done.
Yep, oh, I know that.
So, and I've stated a lot of my concerns even since I've been here, and I think the P cards got cleaned up pretty quick. So.
Yeah, I think most of it is cleaned up. It just is.
Yeah.
Yeah, some things that have to be.
There's obvious things to improve.
Yeah.
So, one thing I've really stressed is being very transparent with reports and providing things for the board. So that's
I think
why
the changes that you've made are good.
Yes.
Yes.
If there's anything else you want to see, just go ahead and ask. We'll get it.
We're noticing and we appreciate it for sure.
Definitely.
Is there any way I could be the next one here? I don't want to be a pain in the butt, but my kid's practice got done 5 minutes ago, and it's in the town right now. I wanted to talk about what I needed to talk about, and I gotta go grab them, because I didn't know this meeting was gonna go extended.
That's fine, maybe.
Is that okay with
Yeah.
everybody?
Yeah.
I'm gonna bunch here in line, so I apologize, but very rarely do I have something super important to talk about, but this is actually have something together here, so. So my big topic is our sub-pay that we have at my big topic is keeping Lakeville school bus drivers behind the wheel. As you can see the header on my thing. I don't do this 1.1, 0.5 stuff. I just base it on here, so. The big thing about our sub-pay is that not like I'm really asking, you guys are all talking about saving money here, I'm asking for money, so it's like, okay. But, what I'm really talking about is, all of our subs have been here for, I've been the I was a substitute bus driver in 2007. I'm pretty sure every one of them has been here longer than me. We're talking, 15 plus years now, pretty much all our substitute bus drivers. And they just get whatever we think that they should get. So, what I'm proposing is, and thinking about Black Duck and Warroad, they basically treat their substitute bus drivers like a full-timer as far as a pay scale goes, so your steps and stuff like that all transpire. So the big, and that's what I would like to do, because the big problem is I get some of these bus drivers that, you know what, maybe I don't want to be a full-time bus driver anymore, I don't want to have to come into it on a daily basis, but I'm willing to drive sub, I'm willing to sub. So, for instance, right now I have 3 drivers that are willing to, they're stepping down from driving or half step down from driving, but they're willing to sub to, but they want to be at their, you know, somewhere close to where they're at or their pay. They want to take a $5 an hour pay cut to come drive a sub-drive bus. And sub-driving bus is very stressful on a person because you're driving a bus, like these full-time drivers, they're driving the same route every day, they know all their parents. You get these subs to drive, stepping in there, and they don't know any of the parents, they don't know any of the kids' actions, stuff like that. So, you know, it is a little bit of a stress on these substitute bus drivers, but as far as our routes go, I'm just gonna step to the routes. We have 8 routes. 2 of them right now are empty, and fortunate enough to have some of these substitute bus drivers take on a route at a part-time sub basis. For instance, I got one driver that's she goes somewhere in the winter, she takes off after Christmas break, and she's back April, so she's willing to cover her route from April, till the school's over, and then continue school until Christmas break. I got another bus driver that had a health problem, she retired, and she wants to come back, and she's willing to basically take over a route minus some dates and vacations and whatnot, but basically 3/4 of the time takes another route over that I got vacant. Also with the driver has, 30 years of driving under his belt, but is not really excited to come back and take a pretty good pay cut. So that's where this all stemmed from. I'm just trying to keep these subs that we have on around, especially if they full-timers that end up being subs again. And so I called around some schools, Lakewood, Black Duck, Grigville, Warroad, I just started calling on the phone. Some of the transportation directors I know. Lakewood schools, we right now are $20 an hour. Our step 1 pay is $19.52 as far as a full-time driver, so we are there as far as that. Black Duck does step 1 full-time bus driver, which is $25.70 an hour. Grigville, they do their routes a little differently. Their transportation director goes with the driver and they go over it. They have some sort of formula. But he said his smallest route, shortest route he has, amounts to $56 a route, which is $28 an hour. Warroad, step 1 full-time, that's what they pay their drivers, is $26.10 is the starting wage. Roseau is step 1 pay, which is $25.04 an hour. Benefits for substitute is my next thing. Lake of the Woods, I didn't want to throw us in a bus, we didn't really do anything for substitutes, I just pay them. Black Duck, they get the longevity and experience pay. So if you get a substitute driver from another school, they come here subbing, they're gonna get experience pay and then as they're there, they'll get the longevity pay or the step pay, what we kind of do at our school. And I try to talk to like 4 other people that have worked here for a long time and like try to figure out this step pay and how we do it, and I don't know how it works. But hopefully Jeff will clue me in on that one day. Because I've tried to dissect it myself, I just can't figure out. Warroad gets longevity pay. Everybody's treated like a full-time employee. If you want to be full-time with time off and benefits, stuff like that. So as far as their pay scale goes, they get treated like a full-time employee. And then Roseau, even when they start at the right pay scale, I didn't quite get out of if they keep their pay going, so I just put nothing on there because I didn't want to keep it for something I didn't know about. Then substitute bus driver retainment. Does our district? I'm not saying we don't. I'm just saying, does our district value our sub drivers, implementing sub drivers in the day-to-day missions at the school, spotlighting sub drivers, which Lisa's helped me on, or she's talked to me about it, and I provided some names and stuff, including sub drivers in teams that deal with student behavior. That's a big thing, like that I don't think we're missing the boat on a little bit, is you know, a lot of these drivers that I have, and some of them, you could invite them to a behavioral meeting for any student that drives their bus, and they wouldn't come. I got some drivers that are just like that, but a majority of them would like to be like, hey, if there's something I can do to help this kid behave on the bus or things like that. So I think we should maybe get a little better at maybe including some of these bus drivers, because the problem I have is you send these kids out to these buses with like 4 teachers and 5 paras, and then expect one driver that's driving a bus to kind of, you know, handle the ropes for an hour to, you know, at least an hour behind the bus. So if we can do it as a school and help, you know, do some things like that. I'm gonna start getting, is the vector training. I'm gonna offer all my drivers vector training opportunities. If they wanna do some of the vector training that we offer, and then I'm gonna, so to stay on track here, as far as what I wanna do is, obviously, like with school, and we'll talk about this in the negotiations, it's probably about $5 an hour behind on their bus pay. But what I'm here to talk about now is to get some of these drivers that have lots of experience and drove lots of buses that are subs paid what they deserve. So I'm just asking that maybe we adopt whatever the contracted pay scale is for our full-time drivers, to implement that for our part-time drivers as far as the pay scale goes.
So you've discussed with Jeff already?
Yeah, we had a mild discussion on it, yes.
So you want us to act on it tonight?
No.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking next month. I just wanted to get the ball rolling.
Okay.
I wanted to get it out here and kind of give my little spiel here, and I'm thinking next month we'll act on that. But the big thing is I got 3 drivers that have either had to retire medically or they're ready to come back, or step down and they're wishy-washy and coming back because of they're going to take a graduate or a $5 an hour pay cut, and $3 to $5 an hour from what they're making at the moment. And then I'd like to grandfather some of these drivers that have been with the school district for 15 years to be in the STEP program for their pay. So as of right now, we're paying the bus driver that walks off the street as a substitute, walks into the building and gets a bus license, we're paying the same as the bus driver that's been helping the school district for 15 years. And I think that it's worth being on the same pay scale as a sub. And it's really that spiel on the sub pay. And I think we got a resignation of one of the drivers, and that's all I have. So.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No. Can I bring up a small point about the bus drivers? What's the average age? You're looking at a bunch of them leaving.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah.
We're well aware.
I think maybe the best route forward at this point is for you.
We'll sit down and put some options together and a proposal, so.
See, maybe a couple options, or,
Yep.
I don't know. And I don't know if it's something we can change at the next board meeting, but
We'll bring information to the next board meeting, and then we'll get feedback from the board, and then.
yeah, I mean, we have made some other changes as far as raises go, and it's.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry I had to leave early. I think it was a bonus.
Well,
It's not early.
sorry, we're late. Okay. We're doing a very good job here.
It's fine.
Well,
Yeah.
Nothing on the agenda.
Yeah. Okay, next big subject. I feel like the end.
Yeah. So we're also talking about budget reduction. We also have a request for spending more money. This is a proposal you have seen already, and in the packet is both the proposal that I put in front of the board as well as I handed out additional revenue information, which was requested by you. So that's an addition today and should be in front of you. So in summary, we are feeling the pinch in terms of lack of lifeguard staff, and as a result have reduced the number of hours that the pool is open. In an attempt to reverse that, where we can have a little bit more sway and pull for more lifeguard staff, we would like to up the, two things, up the salary or the cost per hour of a lifeguard, as well as then change the staffing model that we currently have. Currently, it's often, if we have a busy night, 2 lifeguards on at a time. We'd like to shift that model so it's 1 lifeguard and 1 safety team member. A safety team member would get paid a little bit less. They'd be first aid, CPR, AED trained, but they would not be full-on lifeguard certified. And the way the lifeguarding rescues are set up at this point often only requires 1 person in the pool anyway. So this would allow us to spread our certified lifeguard staff out a little bit more, hopefully expanding the hours that we can have the pool open, as well as then reducing the cost at not paying 2 people $15 an hour, but you're paying 1 person $15 an hour, and the safety team member $12.50 an hour, which is the rates at which we're proposing we increase wages. So you have seen the details on that. The new information is this revenue pre and post-COVID sheet. Just as a quick explanation, I decided to take 6 months in 2019 and 6 months in 2022, acknowledging that 2020 and 2021 are just too funky to evaluate in terms of data, namely COVID, and also then our pool remodel redo last summer just has thrown our numbers into a funkiness in a way that they're not super strong. Not strong, but just not worthwhile. Anyway, so you get both your revenue, which you're seeing in each of those segments, as well as then your attendance. That's an acknowledgement, which I've heard from the board before about, we want to make sure we're making a little bit of money on this, but it is a community service in the way that attendance and usership is as important, if not more important, than what we're actually making in revenue on this. So I figured those were important numbers to track. A shout out to Lisa Beckstrand for tracking this attendance. She does a very thorough job in keeping track month by month, both of specific who's showing up at specific things, but also the special stuff like Indus Swimming, Little Fork, Rainy River, Big Grassy. All of those are organizations and communities that come and enjoy our pool beyond even just Lake of the Woods County. So the far side then, on the right-hand side, you'll see the percent change in each of those attendance numbers. And then I added a little bit more information on the bottom, the schedule in 2019 versus the schedule in 2020, what do we open and when, and then as well the prices. So the most significant changes I think you're seeing are the number of fewer adult swimmers in those adult swim hours. I mean, some really significant drops in people showing up. They're also the higher priced revenue source, right? So if you're losing that many people, you're also losing a more significant revenue source.
Well, is it also due to the reduced hours?
Very possibly. I think especially if we're starting to psychologize this a little bit, people are using those morning adult swims as their source of exercise. And when you reduce their opportunities at that, they're going to find other ways of getting exercise. And so by reducing those, I think we're reducing people's habits of being a part of the pool and of doing that. The other thing I wanted Lisa to highlight is that you've seen a little bit of a kind of an influx here even in just the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, probably since Christmas, I've seen the attendance grow, especially on a Friday night. I mean, I think I worked a couple Friday nights and we had almost 70 people per night. So I think people are starting to get back and using the pool. Birthday parties are picking up. That's popular on a Friday night after school. So
Yeah. And I think the lack of those Saturday, Sunday hours are significant as well, right? Those are the hours that we struggle to find lifeguards because the lifeguards are already stretched thin, so.
Those are all your pool parties too.
Right, exactly. So, there is a motion in front of you tonight to, I know Boyd, you had said it maybe even increasing this more than $15 an hour for a lifeguard. I guess I'll let you guys pump that up if you want to. But our current suggestion is, recommendation is $15 an hour for a lifeguard. That's a flat rate for both students and adults. And then a $12.50 an hour rate for a safety team member.
Now, do you already know that if we bump it up to $15 an hour, you're gonna get 2 more lifeguards who are willing to work the hours now, or do we not know that?
We don't know that.
No.
And we don't have enough people to even, I mean, our staff is so limited that it's just hard to even fill those spots. We just need to get more people to sign on to be either a lifeguard or a safety team member.
Yeah. There is your thought was to hold a lifeguard training this spring at some point. March-ish,
I just talked to the instructors and we're trying to set up something for after Easter, like those next 2 weekends after Easter. So.
And I think the intent is not to say, okay, we're going to increase this to 15, we're going to be open more immediately. I foresee this as maybe even a year-long endeavor in terms of, okay, now we can advertise a higher rate of pay once you get certified as a lifeguard. So let's get you signed up to take the lifeguard class in April. Let's get you onboarded into summer and fall months so that by the time we hit Christmas of next year, we have this kind of the full slate of offerings that we used to have pre-COVID, which are that schedule you see in 2019.
How do these work, like the bus substitutes and the lifeguards and stuff? Do they fall under the union contracts, or are they outside of any of that? We're not going to run afoul of that, any negotiation type stuff, are we?
No, you have to be careful with substitutes, because if they put in, I can't remember how many days consecutive in the same position, then they need to.
Then they're basically full-time, yeah.
Yes. Is it 28?
That'd be more for the bus drivers and stuff, but I get it.
Yeah.
But that's temporary, seasonal. There's probably not enough hours to make it
Yeah.
certified or a contracted position. But you take a substitute bus driver and stick them in the same route after so many days in that route, then they need to be an employee and fall under the contract. So it
yeah.
can get a little dicey.
There wouldn't be a disadvantage of that if they were on the same step program, or would there? I'm not quite sure on that, but that would be something to look at, I guess.
I think you got to look at everything, because you don't want, I mean.
Oh, yes, I understand that.
You know.
You have to look at benefits and all kinds of stuff.
And where your regular employees are salaried, where they're at, and, you know, so it's, I think we can come up with a way to improve it.
With something, yeah.
But it's going to cost more.
Exactly.
So.
Does the lifeguard salary, does that fall under the pool, the taxation part of it and everything?
That's part of the
okay.
Fund 4 community ad. So the increased expenses would be reflected in the levy.
In the levy.
As that cycles through. So that would be part of what we submit to the state for pool expenses.
And how does this increase affect like what we currently spend now? Where is that? Can we cover it?
We must be spending, I mean, our pool hours are open like half as much as they were in 2019.
Yeah.
Well, we must be spending less right now.
Yeah.
Well, spending I mean, I'm thinking the salary is a very small portion of the pool. I mean, it's the operating it. So if you're going to have this hole full of water heated and everything, you may as well have people using it. So yeah, we need to let's get some lifeguards in there and whatever we need to do that.
That's kind of my question is right now we're proposing an increase of $2.50.
Yeah, I think that's a start, but I think you guys should also look at kind of a longevity type thing too, because in that email, I don't know how many people got that one, but I think everybody did, but, you've got, and lifeguards are historically low pay, but it's a cool job, so when there's a surplus of people who are doing it, then yeah, you can kind of get away with that. But the amount of responsibility that they have is pretty phenomenal, so yeah, so somebody who's a very experienced lifeguard or something like that, we should maybe look at something more than $15 an hour, and then maybe we can keep them and get them, or give them an incentive to stay.
And yeah, you've suggested that in terms of, there are a couple of those lifeguards, like a Sunny Doro, who's been around for a long time, is a kind of the backbone of that staff in a way that you can count on her. And how do we value folks like her over the course of time so that we can get her to stay, so that she continues, because this is also, like you said, a position where we're gonna have high schoolers in that position, which I think it's a great job to train high schoolers, to have them be involved. But you also want some seasoned staff to be able to mentor and supervise in some informal ways.
The other one that would be nice too, like my daughter Rachel is a lifeguard, and she's going to school in Moorhead, so she comes back every once in a while, and it's like if they know they're coming back, and especially if you have that incentive to get them some hours in on a weekend, maybe that's a possibility too, to get some of the kids who are gone to college now.
Yeah, that might be something we do, is email, hey, we have up to the pay now to $15 an hour. Do you want to, when you're here for Easter, stop in, do a shift for us?
So we've got
this. Coming back for Easter?
Yeah.
Put her on the schedule.
She is. She's.
Break.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got this one on the docket right now, but I would suggest you guys kind of look into it either. Maybe, I'm sure some committee this would fall under some committee, so maybe look into it a bit more that way, or plan.
Are you saying we've got it on the agenda tonight to approve the staffing proposal? If we
And the increase.
And the increase. If we don't, does that throw a wrench in your plans if we defer it until February just to see, or are we?
I'd say pass it right now, but then continue on with a more overall plan. I mean, this is kind of a stopgap measure as far as I can tell.
Yeah. You're asking about if we defer to find more information. I think the current model is troubling, and not troubling in that, but you guys are stretched thin.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but I think stretched thin in a way that they could manage through April or May until we try and find some more lifeguards. But I am hesitant to, I think our next step is closing even more sessions, which to me, there's a little bit of a kind of downward spiral. If we continue to close sessions, then people use it less, which means they don't,
And the hours you're looking at, I mean, literally, you're talking about hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
right.
It's not huge.
That it's, I mean, in the realm of the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll get you some lifeguards or stand you the chance and open more hours, we should do it.
To Boyd's point, we are always paying for that pool, regardless of if it's in use or not. So I just think we got to try and be a little bit proactive. And like you said, it is a stopgap for the moment, but be proactive about trying to generate business and enthusiasm about it.
Well, and I think having it open more and more opportunity for employment might encourage some people to take the class.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to start somewhere.
Yep.
They have more hours available to work,
exactly.
Which means that it's
Quite honestly, I didn't realize the lifeguards were paid that little.
Well, and we're not that low. I mean, you asked, we did that at some point.
Warroad's low.
Roseau, I mean.
Warroad only pays theirs like 10 an hour.
They must have a lot of.
It's very common to not pay, because it is this dichotomy of, it's not the most exciting job in the world, but it also holds a high level of responsibility. So it's this weird limbo about, it's also managing kids and, all that stuff,
So I would recommend considering the proposal as is, and we can look at a graduated increase for experience, and
Yep.
that can be down the road separately to take care of the people that have been there for a while.
And good information, and thank you for the revenue.
Yeah, sure.
Not that I wanted to increase it or anything, I just felt
No,
like
it's
you
great.
did, that it's like, it's one of those things that, you know, we're not really looking to pay for it necessarily.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
All right, anything else?
For the sake of time, keep going. All right, buildings and grounds, so.
See a document going.
Fire alarm stuff.
I'm assuming that's the same vendor. It's in the board packet. It's in the working session packet. There's a document about,
So it's just the Dakota Fire Protection Contract renewal, is my understanding?
oh yeah, it must be in the board pack, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Well, it's in the working
Is that in the
session.
working session?
So
Do we need to
I don't,
add it to the agenda?
I would just use this as informational, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. if it's
And
not on
then,
the-
it's, then we'll have to put it on the agenda if it's something that needs
It's
to be.
already signed.
Page 30.
Yeah, I got it. But it's already signed.
12/29/2022.
Yeah,
Please indicate
Harley
when
signed
it's
it,
under
didn't she?
decline by
Yeah.
January 31st of this month, or this year.
Okay. So I would just take it as informational and I'll find
It
out.
looks like Harley signed it.
Yep.
Because it's for 2023. Thought it was, but I thought I better look.
Yeah, I don't think we have a choice but to have the fire sprinkler system inspected on a regular basis. So.
Required bid level.
Yeah.
So I would just say it's informational. I will get more information for you if needed.
Okay, food service, Jill and Jill.
I just want to point out, Sheena already referred to the $6,000 grant to Farm to School. The really cool thing about it is it encourages you to, or you're required to, I don't know what the proper word is, to seek out farmers in your state and then buy from them. So Jackie found, and she was telling me that you can't just like pick a farmer and then they get to provide, they have to be certified, and there's, you know, of course, regulations. So the ones she found were, she found a beef farmer in Badger that we're gonna be able to use those funds for, and then a wild rice company in Black Duck. So that's kind of exciting that we can.
So I thought that was neat.
Yeah. So hopefully we can, I'll talk with her more about showcasing that to the students so they actually know where their food's coming from. So, cool.
That was kind of cool.
Thank you. Okay, anything else on the transportation is already covered, so that will adjourn it.
It's one of the longest working sessions
I
in
know.
history here that I can remember.
It's like you're trying to get to that 4 hour already.
Oh my God.
Okay, Corinne, way to go. She's in charge now, so.
Long meeting,
There's be one of
quick
those-
here.
There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, oh no.
That's fine.
All right, Nicole, meeting to order and. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make the motion.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? Motion passes. No board presenters. No written communication. On to new business. Looking for a motion to approve the December 19th, 2022 board meeting minutes and the January 3rd, 2023 organizational meeting minutes.
Make the motion.
Motion by Johnson.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? Motion passes. Oh, call for vote.
Gotta have a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so, motion passes. All right.
Should be El Presidente.
I gotta shorten this up. All right, looking for a motion to approve invoices, financial statements, bank reconciliation, wire transfers, and purchase card statement.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it. Any discussion? Call for vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. Next, looking for a motion to approve personnel resignations, retirements, and appointments. We have a resignation from Georgiana Klostermeyer, bus driver.
I'll motion.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion?
Thank you. She's been around.
Just for the season, right? This is the one that goes
No, it
more?
is not.
No?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I think this person's willing to be on the sub list
Okay.
on a limited
Great.
basis, is my understanding.
So are we excited about her retiring? No.
We're,
I mean, it'd be
no,
nice for her.
yeah.
But
Great
thankful
that
she
you,
was up there. Yes. All right, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next, looking for a motion to approve the final audit report for year end June 30th, 2022.
We'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion? No discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to approve the third and final reading of policy 712 video surveillance other than on buses.
I'll make the motion.
Second by Lyon.
Any discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we're looking for a motion to approve a resolution directing the superintendent to make recommendations for adjustments in curriculum, programs, and staff for the 2023-24 school year.
I'll make that motion.
And then,
Second. Whichever.
second by Boyd.
Sure.
Okay, any discussion?
Do a good job.
Yeah.
That's only recommendation for adjustments, and you guys get to make the final decision, so.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
It is kind of the grist of your job, isn't it? Right there.
Making
You push it in your
recommendations.
lap and say, good luck.
All right. Looking for a motion to increase substitute rates for pool staff, including the following. And should we say, this is not just sub rates, but
No.
also the structure
Just rates.
Yeah, I
itself?
think it's supposed to say just rates.
Just rate, this is
Okay.
not substitute.
And then, and also the,
Adjustment for the pool schedule.
Yeah.
Increase the pool schedule.
like
For
the
schedule.
proposal itself, as
The
far as
proposal
using.
itself. Yeah, we left it open-ended because I didn't know exactly where you were gonna land on actual rates. So you could say, a motion to approve the pool staffing proposal as
presented.
Yep.
Okay.
Because really, it's like curriculum. We don't have a say in the hours there.
No.
It's just a
Right.
question of how much we're paying the people who run that.
And then
Yeah,
we're
and
going
all
from-
of that is stated in the proposal itself.
Yeah, and going from 2 lifeguards to that tier. Yep.
Well, I motion it.
Okay.
As presented.
Could the pay for?
Hang on, I'll second.
Okay, and now we'll open for discussion.
Fire
and
away.
just-
Could the pay for the lifeguards fall under the premise of coaches and?
It's under the levy, the pool levy.
And a different.
It's already taken care of. It's all, we're already taxed on it and paying for it. It's all under the
Community
pool
ed
levy.
fund for it.
Yep.
Potential pay raise?
It's also a different
Yeah.
fund entirely.
Yeah.
So I think what you're alluding to is the money that Sheena was talking about, the athletic stuff. That's going to our general fund, the 01 fund, and this is coming out of the 04 fund, and they just don't cross really, unfortunately. But it's a great idea, because yes, there's money to be had and it's extracurricular, but the funds are different.
All right. So we gotta,
Before you vote, what is the exact wording of this?
so we have a motion to adopt the pool staffing proposal that was presented.
Yep. Was there a copy of that in the board material? Okay, perfect.
Well, you sent it separate, didn't you?
Yeah, I sent it before and then I included it.
Yeah.
All right, we got a motion in a second, we had some discussion, I'll call for a vote.
And what certified lifeguards? Rate could be what, 15?
15, and then safety team members 12 to 15.
So do you want to include that in you're including the price, the cost in the motion, does it need to be in there?
I think
Well, it's already in the
Yes, it is.
summary too, so.
I'm not scratching it.
we'll go with their proposal.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, you can keep that.
all right, call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion to set board member compensation at $120 for meetings lasting longer than 4 hours.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
Should we have a
Is this
lengthy
not what it
discussion
was?
about it, or? I got 2 hours of talk here.
So this is what it's been. We just never had it
was
clearly stated.
Defined.
Defined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's always the question of what is it?
Okay.
And
Said
next
it's
year we're
been
gonna
that way for
capture
a
it
while,
in our.
so, yeah.
Right, organizational
Yes.
meeting.
Organizational meeting.
Yeah.
Should have been done there.
Okay. We had a motion and a second.
That was the discussion.
That was the discussion. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Then looking for a motion to approve resolution 2022-23-18, accepting a $150 donation from Marcia and Scott Schmiezik for the backpack program.
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Whatever.
I'll get the Carl. Okay, any discussion?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any other business? All right, we will adjourn at 7:59.
Did you get this one?
I did.
Okay.
And
And
I
I'm,
called her,
oh, good.
and I
There's
called
a-
Mary,
Make sure you're.
prompting
Oh.
her comments, I think.
Okay, and that was the discussion I'd like to initiate. Maybe
Right.
I think we should probably,
not.
Jeff and
Because I tried
Gretchen
to
are doing
update
a
my
nice
mailing
job, but
address and you're like, oh, we'll just
maybe
pull
time
it
we start
from
thinking about paying the
Tracy,
position.
so.
Well, and I guess
Yes, yes.
what I feel like is